You need to think about those things that you actually liked doing at one time. Why did you start liking doing that? Like, what was it that got you to do what you're doing now? Or have you never enjoyed where you are? Well, it's time for you to take a reassessment and to discover who you are once again. And so self discovery is critical because if I don't really know who I am, if I don't know like the things that I like, the things that call to my heart, that speak to my heart, then I'm kind of going to continue to do like anything that comes my way. Greetings, this is Coach Charlene, and welcome to When the Moment Chooses You. I am your host of this brand new podcast, and I am so thrilled to be here with you today. And so we did our launch, we did our kickoff, and it has been absolutely exhilarating and enjoyable to connect with the audience the way that I've been connecting. And so our first one, I did a little video on why the podcast. And then we had the wonderful Shola Richards with us, which we had a wonderful conversation about birthing dreams. I mean, he talked about his story, and his story is so unique and so powerful. And if you have not listened to his yet, you have to subscribe to YouTube to actually see him in action. It's also on Apple and Spotify. And so let me tell you a little bit more about me and about these destiny moments that I keep telling you about. So I truly believe that we can create and we can inspire destiny moments because every heartbeat truly matters. And I say that intentionally because in the beginning of 2022, we had just gone through 2 years of trauma and COVID-19 and systemic racism and so many fires. I mean, we had one crisis after another crisis. And so we had just come through that. And I know personally, I started to feel a little bit on the burnt out side and the exhausted side. And I know many of you can attest to that that are working today, especially in healthcare in particular. We know the research shows that burnout it was already a challenge before COVID-19, but now it's an actual pandemic by itself because we have nurses leaving the professions, physicians leaving the profession, healthcare workers leaving the profession because they are overwhelmed. And I mean, Shola did a wonderful job even explaining about some of that in detail because just because you decide to shift and go somewhere else doesn't mean that it's a wrong thing. Sometimes our priorities or our heart begins to start speaking to us about doing things that are a little bit differently than we did before, even if we've been in, like for instance, me, I've been in the health profession for over 30 years. I've been at my last organization for 22 years. And there are some passions and some stirrings in my heart that I want to pursue. And so just because you end one chapter and you start another chapter does not mean that you failed. It means that you might have gotten deeper insight into what you truly were called to do, what that moment presented for you. You may have done everything you needed to do for a particular organization. So I don't want you to beat yourself up because you're starting to have these feelings of frustration and uneasiness. I call it unrest. And it really is, I believe, your spirit telling you that, hey, there's something more that I want you to be doing. I'm tapping on the heart, your heart, so that you can pay attention to this uneasiness and this unrest that I have within you so that you can go in a little bit deeper with yourself to see who you really are. And so that process is called self-discovery. Self-discovery is really me taking some time with myself to find out my own passions, to find out those things that I love to do, to find out what am I thinking about all the time? Or something that is on the inside of you that just keeps stirring you. And I mean, you may even look at a problem and say, oh my gosh, just like Shola said, he said, I wish somebody would do something about it. And then he had to turn the finger back at him. Why can't I do something about it? Absolutely. I truly believe that those things that anger you, sometimes you're called to fix. Those things that stay with you, that you feel this sense and this urgency to make a difference in that area or to change or to innovate or to create any of that. Those types of things began to start stirring on the inside of us. And that's, I believe, our inner voice trying to tell us that, hey, I have something else for you to do. So don't get stuck where you are. And when we think about what we've just gone through, I used a quote before, and it's actually a phrase, and it says, don't hold on to your history at the expense of your tomorrow, at the expense of your destiny. So a lot of us, these last 2 years have absolutely been a challenge. It has brought trauma. It has brought so many different things, but you made it through that 2 years. And so you don't want your history to eclipse your future, if you understand what I mean by that. Because sometimes we can get stuck in our past, in our last 2 years, that it's hard for us to move forward. And so that's one of the things that I'm really, really focusing in on. So in December, I had to take some time to myself and I had to begin to start pondering, remembering my why, remembering why I went into, for me, the nursing profession in particular, but you need to think about those things that you actually liked doing at one time. Why did you start liking doing that? Like, what was it that got you to do what you're doing now? Or have you never enjoyed where you are? Well, it's time for you to take a reassessment and to discover who you are once again. And so self discovery is critical because if I don't really know who I am, if I don't know like the things that I like, the things that call to my heart, that speak to my heart, then I'm kind of going to continue to do like anything that comes my way. But when you truly start thinking about a vision for your life or your purpose, and I like to describe purpose as the original reason for your existence. See, there was a reason that you were created and sent here to the earth realm. I truly believe that everyone comes here with something significant that they were born to do. And hey, I know that I came here on this earth to inspire other people to purpose. See, you have to get to a place where you discover that. Now, I didn't know that in the beginning. In the beginning, I started out the same way, went about the same trajectory, graduated from school, went into college, and went into the military. I did all of those different things, but I was discovering who I was as I moved forward into some of the things that I was pursuing. And as you move forward, that's when you start noticing the different passions. And then people even start telling you that, oh my gosh, Charlene, every time I'm around you, you're talking about my purpose. You're talking about empowering me to be a better person. You're talking about how I can be more resilient. And that's another little clue to help you to kind of identify that reason that you were born. Because a lot of times, if it's on your mind all the time, if you're dreaming about it all the time, if you find yourself inspiring people, empowering people, encouraging people, if you find yourself drawing things, if you find yourself creating music, if you find yourself looking at ways to strategically, systematically make things better, then those are clues. Those are little signs. There's little giftings that help you to actually discover really your reason for being. See, I don't really believe that we're just here just to be here on this earth. I believe that each and every one of us have something that we are called to contribute to humanity. See, there's something in my heart that I want to get out before I actually am done with my assignment down here on this earth. There's something unique. There's some people that I'm called to touch. There's people that I need to inspire. There's people that I need to help them to open their eyes, help them to come from under the dross of that beautiful sparkling diamond. When you see a diamond, it's beautiful, it's brilliant, it's sparkling, but it didn't start out in that state. Any of you that have seen a diamond, you could just Google it and look and see how it looks. It's got a lot of black soot on it. I mean, just a lot of stuff on it. But as you begin to start chipping away at that, as the process to get it to be a diamond, then you see this brilliant, beautiful diamond. And I think life is like that a lot. Many times we have so many things that are piled upon us that it almost overwhelms us to the point where we can't really see beyond the dross, see beyond that dark covering that's upon us. And so your aim and your task is to work on yourself. And that's why I truly believe that personal development is so critical because in order for me to discover myself and to see who I am, I have to work on myself because I've picked up some bad habits along the way. I've picked up other people's expectations along the way. I've picked up some things that really don't serve me well. So it's so important for you to work really hard on yourself. And I like one of the greats said, work hard on yourself than you do on your job. When I work hard on myself, then that's going to actually paint my brand to be that authentic version of myself that I'm desiring to be, the highest expression of myself. I'm talking about the self that in the midst of turbulence and storms and challenges and things like that, I'm still able to remain my authentic self, even though I have to work through the difficulties and the obstacles and the challenges of life. I believe that there's a place where you can get to where you can actually master your brand, even though there's moments of upset, there's anger, there's all of the other emotions. I truly believe that you can master your emotions to the point where you maintain your brand. And so self discovery is critical. You have to figure out who you are. So just like I was just talking about, there's a lot of people that are reconsidering, retiring, changing professions and all of that. And that's okay. Like, I don't want people to feel like they're trapped in one spot because I truly don't believe that we're trapped. We have to do the things that we need to do to get to the places where we're trying to get to. But you truly cannot get there until you hear. In other words, you have to look at your current condition and see where you are before you can get to your preferred future or that vision that you see. I heard a story one time, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. And the story was that they were on a big cruise ship, and there was a little girl, and she was there with her dad, and everybody came out on the dock, and it was a beautiful day, and everybody was standing around, and they were looking at the beauty of being out there in the middle of the ocean. And so all of a sudden, she starts hitting her daddy's leg, just tapping on his leg, and she's like, "Daddy, Daddy, what are you guys doing? Daddy, Daddy, I can't see, I can't see." And then he picked her up. She finally got to him and he picked her up, put her on his shoulders. And then she was up there and she was amazed. And you know what she said? She said, "Daddy, I can see farther than my eyes can look." And that's truly how we have to be. That's vision. That is the ability to see beyond our eyes, see beyond our current circumstances, see beyond the pain, beyond the anger, beyond the bitterness. You have to be able to see beyond that. And that's critically important when you're talking about becoming the highest expression of yourself and discovering who you really are. Now, let me give you a story that I had because I'm going to be unpacking those different things that I've experienced on my journey. So I was 17 years old. I did really well in school, in high school. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. And in my high school, I pretty much mastered and got all A's. And so I graduated number 8 in my class. And that was a great honor. I mean, I was like a total bookworm and I was kind of like a square and didn't really do anything outside of my schoolwork. And I was a majorette, twirling the baton. Great childhood. However, when it was time for me to consider what was next, we didn't have money for school. So I was walking to the mall one day, kind of pondering, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? what's next? And so I get to the mall, and as I'm walking through the mall, and I happened to go all by myself this time, and I was walking, and I saw a sign and it said $25,000 Army College Fund. And I was like, oh my God, that would be amazing because then I wouldn't have to burden my parents with them having to say, I'm sorry, I don't have any money for school. And so, you know what? I went into the store. It was almost like that sign drew me in there. And so I went in, I'm still in school, and I'm looking at, I talked to a recruiter, and he actually helped me to sign up into this early entry program. And it was where you sign up, and then after you graduate, they come to get you. And so I signed up, and I just felt like, wow, that was great. Now, at this point, I was really afraid to tell my parents about what I had just did, but there was a little excitement on the inside of me because I was like, okay, there's something that I can do beyond where I was. Because I did want to do something beyond. Now, I had never left home or anything. I was very sheltered right there in my parents' home. However, I signed up, and I think I told my parents about, it might have been a week before, because like, you go back to school and you kind of forget what you did. And I don't think personally I actually knew the brevity of what I did. I didn't. And so here we go, 1984, time for me to graduate. And so I graduate, and then they call me about a month before the next quarter started, if you were going to go to school. And I was like, oh my God, I actually signed up for the Army, and I'm actually getting ready to leave home. And, of course, I talked to my mom and my dad. It was just very traumatic for them because I didn't really give them time to process. So if I could go back, I would have did that a little differently. But there was something on the inside of me pulling me to a different place. And so I just listened to that voice. I got on the plane and left. Well, one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life was to leave my family. And so I left, went into the military. I mean, it was the most interesting thing. So I'm headed to boot camp. And we've heard about boot camp and how awful it is, and they're kind of right. But I was plunged into this, I think it was about 20 to 30 women of all races in one room, moving from being a civilian to a soldier. Now, this was like training ground for me in a big way. First of all, I was so used to being around my own culture because where I grew up at on the east side was blacks, and on the west side was whites. And so there was not really much mixing at all. And here I am plunged into this multicultural melting pot. And I made so many connections and awesome friendships and learned so much about myself. I went in doing one push up, left out doing 60, because one of my coping mechanisms I noticed was to smile. I love to smile. And so I would have this drill sergeant in my face, just like yelling at me. And I'm like bursting out because he had these big old eyes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And every time I would laugh, he would be like, private, drop and give me 10. And I'm like, what? Drop and give me 10. So that meant that I had to get down and give 10 push-ups. Like I said, I was doing one, I left doing 60. So you see what I was doing. I was busy doing push-ups because I could not take the smile off of my face, because I really think that was a coping mechanism for me. And I stopped doing that because you have it. The military teaches you discipline like no other thing. And I stopped doing that because when I did it one time and I couldn't control my smile, or I couldn't stop smiling because he's like right there in my face, and you got this guy with these big old eyes staring at you or fussing at you. And he told the whole group of ladies to drop. And I was like, oh my gosh, me not being able to stop smiling is affecting the whole team. I got to get this together. And so, of course, I learned discipline through so many different things. And I learned endurance and how to persist and press beyond. And I mean, there were so many things that I learned that was a valuable lesson. And so I finished doing that. And then I'm headed off to California to do my assignment as a medic. And I had wonderful, wonderful experience. But I just think about that destiny moment. See, that was a moment that I had to make a decision to leave familiar and go into the unknown. I had no idea what I really had signed up for until it actually happened. And so once I left, I remember the conversation I had with my dad and with my mom for the first time we were able to use the phone. And I was crying because I was scared. I felt alone. I didn't know anybody. I had to make all these new friends and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, I miss you guys so much. And my dad, he said, you know what, Charlene, you made a commitment. You want to stick with your commitment. You want to honor your commitment. And that was like, I mean, my mom, she was broken and she was just like, just hang in there. Of course, she was ready for me to come home and just bail out at any minute so I can come back home. But that's that voice that my dad told me that I made a commitment, so honor my commitment, really stuck and resonated with me. And I continued to stay there and become this little soldier that was 18 years old, learning how to live life. And so that destiny moment, I truly believe, propelled me into where I am today because I could have stayed with familiar. I could have stayed there in Cleveland, probably definitely would have had a total different destiny, I believe, that probably would not have been so good and may not even be here today because of the lifestyle that was so prevalent where I was. And so why am I telling you this story? I'm starting out from the beginning of where I think it all started, where my moment started. And I truly believe it started with the decision to leave familiar and to go into a place that is unknown. And I think there are moments in our life that visit us like that. Destiny moments, that's what I call them, because they give you an opportunity to decide whether you should keep doing what you're doing, stay steady, or move to the next thing. And many times we are being told to move to the next thing, but it's so scary. It's fear begins to overwhelm you. And then you're like, okay, I can't do this because of A, B, and C. But really, if you have a dream in your heart, I encourage you to just go for it. Go for it, and regardless. And I actually am living this as we go in this podcast. So you're going to see me begin to transform into someone different because this is the first time that I've ever done anything like this with the podcast. And to be quite honest with you, I don't really know how to do a podcast, but the dream dropped in my heart a couple years ago. And then this year in particular, I really started studying about, okay, how do I do this? How can I launch this podcast? I have this great idea. I have this great concept, but how do I actually bring it from what I see on the inside to something on the outside where others can experience it? And that is what I'm doing right now. And so we're going to be growing together because I am no means an expert at this at all. And I do not profess to be. But what I am is passionate about inspiring other people to purpose. I'm passionate about others telling their stories, about me telling my story. And I believe that really the true art of telling stories, it really helps us to empathize with other people. It also helps us to transform because sometimes you may not necessarily have gone through what I've gone through, but you can empathize with me because we're human, we're humanity. We can sit there and I can share my story with you and you can actually feel some of the things that I'm feeling in that moment. And that's what a storytelling storyteller, their power is in how they tell stories. So that's why I'm going to be interviewing different people about when the moment chose them, what did they do? Just like I told you last time on the podcast, do we respond to moments or do we react to moments? I think most people react. When something happens, you have an emotional reaction. But I'm really wanting to train us all to begin to start responding to those moments. We're going to have initial emotional reaction, yes. But then your higher self knows how to respond to those moments. And so as you continue on the journey of self-discovery, I encourage you to begin to start asking yourself questions. Why am I here? Like, really, just ask yourself questions. I remember I was going through 20 years ago or so, like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? Really start digging deep and asking yourself questions. We began to start listening to people like Brian Tracy and Napoleon Hill and all of the greats about Dr. Miles Monroe. He was very significant in our life when we talk about purpose. And he began to start asking these questions, which made us ask questions, the right questions, so that we can get the right answers. Because I remember, like, even when it was time for me I was single, I was very single. I got married when I was around, I don't know, 28 or something like that, 26, 28. And I remember I kept saying that, oh, I want to get married. I want to get married. I want to get married. And that really wasn't the right question to ask. What I really was wanting is to become someone's wife. So to become someone's wife is a little bit different than I want to get married. To become someone's wife means that there's some work that I have to do in order to do that. And so that was the distinguishing factor, or the finer distinction in that. And why is that important? It's important because you have to ask the right questions. So many of people know that I am so into asking our manufacturer God, what was the reason for my existence? And so I began to ask questions like, what was it that motivated you to create me and to send me here on the earth? See, there was a motivation, there was a solution that I was called to fix. There was something I was called to create. There's someone I was called to inspire. So start telling me about what was it that motivated you? And then the answers start coming through other people saying different things, me noticing for myself where my passions began to start lying and all of that. So my point is, make sure you ask yourself the right questions. We start asking questions. I remember Brian Tracy, he had asked a question that if you had $1 million, tax-free dollars, what would you do right now? Would you continue to do the work that you're doing? Would you move to another location? Like, what would you really do if you had $1 million, tax-free dollars, and you just got it in your account? That kind of makes you take the limits off. And that's really what this is about. It's about taking the limits off because our minds are limited. Our mindset is limited a lot of times because of the way that we grew up or the constraints that we grew up in. So you have to renew your mind. You have to transform your thought processes so that you can think beyond where you are. So those questions help you to do that. Like, if I were to die in 6 months, what would I do? What would I spend the last 6 months doing? If I had $1 million, tax-free dollars, what would I do? Like, literally, what would I do today? And I would encourage you to write that down, put it in your journal, and see where you are, see what you're thinking. And that's when you'll start taking the limits off. And that's when you possibly can start tapping into a passion that you have. And so that is going to be my encouragement for this particular episode. My episode title is Self-Discovery. I want you to discover who you are. And so, how do I do that? I began to start asking those questions, like I mentioned. If I had $1 million, you start asking that. If I had a magic wand, what would it look like in my personal life, in my financial life? Start asking those kind of questions so you can start really seeing where you are. And it's so helpful for you to ask yourself those types of questions. So I'm encouraging you today to ask yourself some of those questions. And so with that, self discovery is this episode. And I'm going to pause right there and we'll continue on next month with my next one, which is self manifestation. And so self discovery is key. But remember, you do not want to be the same person that you are tomorrow, that you are today. My goal in life is to be better than I was yesterday. That means that I'm going to be personally working on myself daily. I don't care if it's 10 minutes. Do something for yourself for 10 minutes. If you need to get quiet for 10 minutes, get quiet for 10 minutes. It's so critically important for you to take care of yourself first so that you can take care of other people, to balance yourself first so that you can hear clearly what you need to do. So, thank you for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you soon. If anything resonated with you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Just give me a little, what do you think you're here for? What were you created to do? Why was the divine motivated to create you and send you here on the earth realm? Okay, I'll talk to you in the next episode.